500 years ago, a man lost everything. His name was Niccolo Machiavelli. He had served the Florentine Republic for 14 years. Diplomat, strategist, the man they sent when the situation was too dangerous for anyone else. Then the Medici returned to power. He was arrested, tortured, exiled to a farm outside Florence with nothing to do but think. So he wrote. What came out wasn't philosophy. It wasn't political theory in the academic sense. It was something far more dangerous. An honest account of how power actually works. Not how it should work. Not how we wish it worked. How it works when no one is pretending. 500 years later, the book is still banned in some countries. Still controversial in boardrooms. Still making people uncomfortable. Because nothing in it has changed. The 5 rules you're about to hear aren't history lessons. They're operating instructions for the world you're already living in. The difference between the people who get crushed by these rules and the people who use them is simple. One group knows they exist. Let's open the Codex. Rule 1. Power is never given. It is taken or projected. Machiavelli watched princes rise and fall across Italy. And he noticed something that destroyed the comfortable narrative of his time. That authority comes from legitimacy, from divine right, from being chosen. It doesn't. Power, Machiavelli observed, comes from the perception of power. The moment you act as if you have it, consistently, without apology, without seeking permission, people begin to treat you as if you do. And once they treat you that way, you do. This is not metaphor. It is mechanism. Watch any room where the formal hierarchy doesn't match the social hierarchy, where the official leader isn't the actual leader. The actual leader didn't get elected. They didn't ask for the role. They simply began operating from a position of authority, and the room reorganized itself around them. Machiavelli called this virtue, not virtue in the moral sense, but a kind of decisive, self-possessed force of will, the capacity to act without waiting for external validation. Here's what this means for you right now. Every time you ask for permission, you don't need to ask for. You are transferring power. Every time you qualify your statements before anyone has questioned them, you are transferring power. Every time you wait for someone else to set the frame of an interaction, you are handing them the room. The Codex entry: stop signaling that you need approval to act. Decide, move. Adjust later if necessary. The people who appear powerful are not waiting to be told they're powerful. They already decided. Rule 2. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. This is the most misunderstood line Machiavelli ever wrote. And it's been used to justify cruelty by people who missed the actual point entirely. Read what he actually said. He didn't say fear is better than love. He said fear is more reliable than love. Because love depends on the other person's continued goodwill, and goodwill is fragile. Fear, specifically the fear of consequences, is structural. It doesn't require the other person to like you. It only requires them to understand that your boundaries are real. The practical distinction is this: a leader who governs through love alone is one bad day away from losing everything. A leader who governs through respect and the clear communication of consequences has built something that holds even when relationships sour. This operates identically in modern life. The colleague who's liked but not respected gets their ideas ignored in meetings. Their boundaries get tested. Their time gets wasted. The colleague who is respected, not feared in the sense of terror, but respected in the sense of This person means what they say, and there are consequences when you cross them, gets treated differently. Machiavelli's actual warning was this: don't try to be loved at the expense of being clear. The desperate pursuit of approval is a vulnerability, and everyone around you can see it, even when you can't. The Codex entry: enforce your boundaries with consistency, not with aggression. The goal is not to make people afraid of you. The goal is to make your limits real. So real that crossing them never seems worth it. Rule 3. Men forget the death of their father before they forget the loss of their patrimony. This is perhaps the most cynical line in the entire book, and it is also perhaps the most accurate. What Machiavelli is saying is this: humans are loss-averse in ways that override even grief. We adapt to emotional pain faster than we adapt to material loss. Take someone's father. They mourn and then they move on. Take someone's money, their status, their position, their opportunity, and they remember it forever. This insight completely rewrites how you understand human motivation. People do not primarily act on values. They act on interests, and interests are almost always material. Money, status, security, opportunity, the protection of what they already have. The emotional reasoning comes after, as justification for decisions already made on interest grounds. This is why people who frame every conversation as a moral argument lose. Not because morality doesn't matter, but because the person they're arguing with is not actually being moved by moral considerations. They're being moved by what they stand to gain or lose. The moral language is decoration. Watch how the most effective negotiators operate. They don't appeal to fairness. They don't appeal to what's right. They map the other person's interests. What do they stand to lose if this doesn't work? What do they gain if it does? And they speak directly to that. The Codex entry: before any significant conversation, map the interests in the room. Not what people say they want, not what they claim to value. What do they actually stand to gain or lose? Speak to that. Everything else is noise. Rule 4. Never do an enemy a small injury. Most people read this rule and think it's about revenge. It isn't. It's about the mathematics of incomplete action. Machiavelli observed that rulers who punished their enemies partially, who threatened but didn't follow through, who wounded but didn't neutralize, always ended up worse off than before, because a wounded enemy is a motivated enemy. You've taken something from them. You've given them a reason to come back harder. And you've signaled to everyone watching that your actions don't match your words. The same principle applies in every competitive environment. If you decide to compete, compete. If you decide to confront, confront completely and with clarity. If you decide to draw a line, draw it in a way that leaves no ambiguity about what happens if it's crossed. Half measures create the worst possible outcome. You've activated the opposition without neutralizing it, and you've damaged your own credibility in the process. This is also why Machiavelli argued that cruelty, when necessary, should be delivered all at once, swiftly, completely, and then stopped. Not drawn out, not theatrical, done, and then over. The cruelty that lingers destroys the legitimacy of the person wielding it. The decisive action that ends quickly is forgotten. The slow, grinding punishment is remembered forever. The Codex entry: be decisive or be silent. There's no productive middle ground between full commitment and full restraint. Half actions are the most expensive actions you can take. They cost you resources, credibility, and enemies, while delivering none of the benefits of either approach. Rule 5. The end justifies the means. What Machiavelli actually meant. Everyone knows this phrase. Almost no one knows what he actually argued. The popular interpretation is that Machiavelli gave people permission to do anything as long as the outcome is desirable. That the ends, any ends, justify any means. That is not what he said. What Machiavelli argued, specifically in the context of political leadership, is that a ruler is judged by outcomes, not intentions. That the population does not care about the moral purity of a leader's methods. They care about whether the state is stable, whether they are safe, whether the economy functions. A leader who maintains all of this through methods that cannot withstand moral scrutiny will be forgiven. A morally impeccable leader who allows the state to collapse will not be. The insight is not, do whatever you want. The insight is, you'll be judged by results, not effort, not intention, not the quality of your reasoning. Results. This reframes accountability in a way that most people find deeply uncomfortable because it removes all the escape routes. You can't blame circumstances. You can't blame the people who didn't cooperate. You can't point to how hard you tried. The outcome is the verdict. The most effective people in any competitive environment have already accepted this. They don't spend energy justifying why things didn't work. They analyze what produced the result, adjust, and move again. The moral accounting comes last, not first. The Codex entry. Hold yourself accountable to outcomes, not effort. Ask not, did I try hard enough, but did this work, and if not, what would have worked? The answer to that question is the only one that moves you forward. 5 rules. 500 years old, still running in every room you walk into. Machiavelli didn't invent these mechanisms. He just had the honesty to write them down when everyone else was busy pretending they didn't exist. That's what made the book dangerous then. That's what makes it useful now. The people who are most effectively using these rules against you, in your workplace, in your relationships, in any competitive dynamic you're part of, are not evil. They're not even necessarily conscious of what they're doing. They've simply internalized these patterns through experience, through observation, through failure and adjustment. You now have the map they built through years of damage. The question Machiavelli would ask is the same one this channel always asks. Not, is this moral? That's the wrong first question. The right first question is, do you understand what's actually happening? Because you cannot respond to a game you cannot see. And you cannot see a game no one ever showed you the rules to. Every video on this channel is another set of rules. Learn them, then decide how you play.